right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. I have a very esteemed, erudite panel with me, and what really, stokes me about this panel is that I have the whole stakeholder ecosystem of startups and CSR with me, a corporate, government representation, incubation center, and then, of course, I have blended finance also. So how do we look at blended finance? So it's a very different kind of discussion that we are going to have over here. How many of you are startups? Any startups? Do we have any startups? Okay, we have couple of them. All right. Let me give you a little background. I represent Bayer. It's a German multinational company, and we are into crop protection and pharmaceuticals and consumer health. And I oversee the CSR for South Asia and also the Foundation for India. We've been having multiple discussions within the organization as to, do we work with startups? If we do, what do we really do? And then if we zero on to what we do, how do we ensure that there is no advantage to the business? Let's say if I take an agriculture startup and it comes out with an innovative process and technology which benefits the business, how do we draw the line? How do we ensure that there's a distinction between business benefit and CSR? And then how do we go about it? What are those phases? We kept hearing words of incubation, acceleration, and we got lost, honestly. And then that's the time we felt we need to understand more. So I'm being a little selfish. This session is more for Bayer to understand the landscape. And I felt if we were getting lost, I'm sure there are many like us who are in this maze out there of startup world and what it really means and how do we navigate it, what do we find. And then I got an opportunity to be at Startup 20, and I realized that the government focus on the world of startup is so huge that there has to be something, right? And it's turning out to be one of the strongest economy driver for the country. So it's a time for us then to take a front seat, understand what it is, pick up the insights, the learnings from my esteemed panelists here, and then work maybe with a couple of you to see what can we do and how can we navigate this field. So I'm very, very keen to have a very strong conversation. So those who were from the startup, I saw a lady put her hand up behind something. Is there a particular question that you want to be addressed from the startup world? Yes, ma'am. Anybody who has some, yes, tell me. Aman, yeah.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what I would like to take away from this discussion is that as corporates and leaders basically in the ecosystem, what is it that you look for in a startup, and how do you really identify the potential of a startup? What are those 2-3 sort of key identifiers or indicators which make a startup stand out?
Fair enough, but I would like to turn that question and go to Aastha to ask, how exactly is a startup defined, and what are those 2-3 indicators, criteria that really makes them call themselves a startup, and where are we in this landscape? I mean, the last I heard, by April 2023, we had more than 98,000 startups in India, and we are the third largest ecosystem in the world after US and China. I'm sure it's more than 1 crore now. So maybe, just start over there, and then maybe sometime Anurag can answer Aman's question.
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarita, and hello to all my fellow panelists. Okay, I'll try and be a little louder also. First of all, Startup India was started back in 2016 by the Honorable Prime Minister with the vision to promote innovation and entrepreneurship in the country, as simple as that. Let me give you the scenario back in 2016. A couple of 300 startups coming from the metropolitan cities, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore and all, located in the tier 1 cities, very less women founders, about 8 unicorns, 120 districts was the cover that we had of startups. Fast forward to 2023, where we are about 100,000 startups. So we are about 1 lakh startups right now, We have about 111 unicorns. Back then, there were just 4 states that had a startup policy. Today, there are 31 states and union territories that have a dedicated policy to help the startups in this ecosystem. We have too many funding schemes for this ecosystem, even though there are talks about the funding winter, but the government support of funding has not stopped. There's a 10,000 crore fund of funds, there's a 1,000 crore seed fund, there is a credit guarantee scheme to provide you collateral free loan. But what is a startup? Like Sarita asked, it is an entity that is working towards innovation or job creation or wealth promotion. So it is an OR criteria. What we say, if it took a TCS or a Wipro 30 years to hit its first $1 billion revenue, a unicorn is reaching that valuation in an average span of 5 years, 7 years, right? So that's how the startups are creating wealth. 60% of the Fortune 500 companies that existed back in 1960s do not even exist now. Thanks to technology disruptions, if you fail to innovate and if you fail to collaborate with startups, or maybe if you don't have the capacity in-house, we encourage startups to provide that support to corporates. So that's how you're disrupting and changing the landscape. I think the importance of startup is well communicated across, thanks to Shark Tank, thanks to our Honorable Prime Minister being the ambassador, the biggest ambassador for us here, thanks to G20. For the first time, the only engagement group, like Sarita said, that was conceptualized by us, that got approved by all the countries, was Startup 20 and is now being taken forward by Brazil. So yes, we've come a far way, but there's a lot to cover. I think for me as this session, if there are, we have leading incubators on the panel and in the audience, if there are more corporates, I would want to encourage more risk capital in startups and show them the potential that, they are there, they are the future. Everything we breathe today, everything we operate today, right from, our morning yoga classes on a cult app, to ordering food from a Zomato or a Swiggy, to taking our cab from a Uber or Ola, it is a startup that is changing how we live, operate and dream, right? And not a MNC. So I believe the power lies with them, and there is a need for all of us to come together to support them and help them.
As that's music to, I think, everybody's ears, that funding by government for startup hasn't dried up. Yeah, so there is merit in reaching out, tapping all those resources. But I'm a little curious, do the startups know where to go, how to look at them, where to find those avenues?
Yeah, so we have, I think, the website, which has about 6.5 lakh entrepreneurs out of not just the startups that we have, are on the platform, and funding is one of the biggest query channels for me also. So, on the request of our Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal, we are doing these weekly open houses with the startups. Even though I have a different topic every week, sometimes procurement, sometimes partnerships, but the only query I end up answering is on funding and how is it that I can access. Can you change the eligibility requirement of funding? So we've created an Investor Connect portal also. We've digitized this journey. You don't need to connect with share your cards, run after investors physically. The investors are coming on an Investor Connect portal under the Startup India website, where they put in their investment thesis that I'm looking for investments. Let's say She Capital has a call there for women-led startups. Looking into these tech areas and with this much of eligibility. So there are about 21 investment calls by the investors there, and a lot of investors who are already looking for connecting with startups. So digitizing this journey has helped spread the message across.
That's very, very interesting. But in the startups, I'm seeing a lot of growth in the healthcare sector, also a lot of growth in agriculture sector. And I'm very curious, Dr. In healthcare, the biggest challenge we have is access and affordability. Right, as a pharmaceutical company, we face all those challenges, especially with patents and expensive medicines. And yet, CSR is all about making healthcare accessible and affordability. What is CCAMP exactly, and what does it do in this space?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sarita, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invite. A very important topic broadly, and I think something that I think it's very timely topic as well, because we are actually going through a churn, very interesting churn post-COVID, in terms of how solutions which are indigenous, which are local, actually can come phenomenally handy and change the way the public health system is going to be delivered going forward. And CCAMP, an organization supported by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and has been around for last 14 years, aims to build these innovations which are solutions for the problems in healthcare, agri, and environment, largely as you can connect health and livelihood together, and see how this breakthrough science and technology based innovations can make a change on the ground, not only for only short term but long term overall. Because the reason the local innovations are important, if I may add here, is that local innovations understand the challenges on the ground which are contextual. Many a time, let's say if we talk about it today, we talk about vaccine delivery, right? Vaccines as a global problem. But if you talk about it, vaccines has its own challenges when it comes to delivery of vaccines in remote areas. With ensuring the efficacious vaccine which is built by what, wherever, delivered on the ground. Or if you talk about a neonate which has been a pre-term delivery, right? We talk about saying, no, 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 there are enough solutions in the world which can support preterm birth for its respiratory support, right? There are machines from large global companies. But if you go on the ground and possibly, I say, from here, 30 kilometers outside Delhi, you will find that those primary healthcare centers do not have capability to support a pre-birth delivery. Very, very, very rare. And that's where you need innovations which are local, which we are building at CCAM, where we are identifying those new ideas, supporting them, hand holding them all the way, and bringing them to now to the public health system and saving them. And that is where the effort is. How can you actually make sure that you understand, you build solutions which understand contextual problems, and then you build it and so that you can actually deliver it on the ground, which can solve the problem, just doesn't tick the box saying that no, no, we have a solution. But those solutions unfortunately do not work in the primary health center far away, because A, they do not have highly trained human resource, they do not have infrastructure, they do not have necessarily other resources to make that machine work, and they are not affordable. Those machines would cost much more and only are available for all of us in the room in the tertiary hospitals we go, but those are not available in the primary healthcare centers. And that is where we need to change if we want to change the public health system of India. We need to address the primary healthcare centers, the district hospitals which cannot afford these capabilities, and those can only come from local innovations which are built, and you CCAM attempts to build these local innovations which will complement these global innovations and come together and provide a much more concrete public health system. And that is where the role of CSR is going to be very important, because many times journey of local innovation is not as steady as global innovations, and it requires risk capital, as Ms. Aastha says. It requires risk capital where sometimes government is not in the play, sometimes corporate is not in the play, to actually go there and build them up, support them either at the early stage or support them at the later stage. And when I say later stage is where actually is very important. If I may take 1 minute and close on this, it has been long, sorry about that. But many times after building innovations, we have realized after 8 to 9 years in the working, we realized that there was another valley of death for these local innovations. That is where that integration in the public health system, because there are rules and regulations in the procurement and tender business. And local innovations who are completely now regulatory approved, sometimes FDA approved, CE approved, the CDSCO approved here, but they do not have the requirements of 3 years of turnover. They do not have the confidence from the system, because all of us want the branded machine. But although it is regulatory approved, the practitioners do not want it. So we have started a program called Innovation Deployment Program, where the CSR and philanthropies are coming and building a pilots in the public health system, which doesn't require procurement. And we are demonstrating and building evidence so that you can show that intervening at the right time with these innovations can save lives. And if I may just close by saying it to the audience, we just did that for the SARS device, which is for this neonatal respiratory device. In Assam, we have done it with, if I may put the name on the table, if you don't mind, SBI Foundation. We have done it over last 3 quarters, and we have seen 75% decrease in the mortality of neonates just by having a right machine which understood how to save neonatal lives right there and go from there. This was not happening because procurement issues which we're having. And we are going to use this 2 years of work, build evidence, and ask these systems to now scale it up and integrate in the larger setup. And that's where they connect with the innovations, local innovations, risk capital from CSR, and engagement with public health is the right triangle that we are trying to work. And that's what CCAM is all about.
No, very interesting because it takes me back to what we do. You know, we work in aspirational districts. We set up telemedicine centers housed in the primary healthcare center. What is missing is the local innovation piece. So, you know, it's a thought I'm going to take away with me. How do we bring in the innovation at the local level? But I'm with you on the challenge of the procurement. With the, you know, doctors don't want to do anything unless they have approval from everywhere. And that's where the barrier is, and that delays a lot of things to go running. But you know, there are corporates who have already started that journey, and I have Anurag with me who can perfectly answer that question that was asked by Aman as to what are the corporates looking for. Anurag, I know you shared with me that 32% of your CSR budget is with startups, right? So what is it that, how did that journey begin? What are those 2-3 indicators, criteria that you look before you choose a startup?
Okay. Thank you for having me around. There are 2-3 things that we did, and you see I'm starting at 36, 39. There's a huge need to democratize the startup space. When I say democratize the startup space, because this particular space is occupied predominantly by people who speak English. And which roughly means that you'll have people from the ecosystem also who understand this particular language. You will never get someone from remote areas talking in a language which is not English and getting the kind of support that they should be getting in. All the digital infrastructure or the content, the way they are placed, all are in English there. And that's one particular bottleneck that we realized when we started our journey, that you cannot, what is called, reach out to the base of pyramid in those geographical areas where they don't speak a language that this particular ecosystem is speaking there. And that's where we partnered with Niti Aayog. We came out with something called Vernacular Innovation Program, where we translated the whole module into 23 different languages there. The idea was that let's make the resources available for everyone. Don't force people to speak a language that is foreign for them. That's where I have nothing against one particular language or nothing in favor of one particular language. But the whole idea is that can you offer the content in a medium or in a way that people can understand it? Because I firmly believe that the innovation should not be constrained by or controlled by few people only, or few communities only, or few languages only there. That's one particular piece that we did. Second piece that we did was to look at, in number of ways, change the way CSR money was getting invested in. At the very beginning, we said that CSR is not, I am not going to, when I say I am talking about Capgemini, we are not going to get what is called completely enslaved by the number game where I'll be only talking about how many people that I've reached out to or how many school kids or how many skilling that I've done. But we said that let's do something that others are not doing and use the CSR fund to create a new road that was not traveled earlier by people there. And that's where we started investing in, or we started putting our resources in, reaching out to, I'll say, the areas where innovation is high, or in typical Indian language, I'll say, jugaad is very high. How can you sharpen that particular thing to place it in a way that market can lap it up? So we started working with, and we also realized that you cannot, what is called, as rightly pointed out, that you need a brand to push these agendas there. So we started working with IITs and IIMs there. We started working with Niti Aayog there to make them become the face of this particular campaign that you were trying to launch it there. And the whole idea was that can I provide support not at the startup level only, because startup is where someone has tried 20 ideas to come to a level where you have one which is viable product in front of you. So we started intervening at the pre-idea level itself or idea level itself to allow people to what is called play around with some of the thought processes which are there in my mind, and then celebrated failures with them. I still remember I went to the board when I was proposing this particular proposal to them. I said that you'll get 20% success from this. And the board was, typical board was that then don't present a proposal like this, Anurag, where your potential success is only 20%. I said that if I don't do this, the success is 0%. So I'm from 0 to 20%, I'm bringing it. So that's the game that I wish to play. So are you there with me? And I'm fortunate that the board was willing to take that particular bit. And that's how we started playing this particular game. And I feel very happy. We started with 6 to 7%. Today we are 32. Next year will be close to 40-45% or so. Because we realize that this is now giving me numbers also. The beneficiary count is increasing, which is music to my the reporting team. This is also creating the impact. This is also providing product offering to my business to also see that if there are certain offerings which are good, they can acquire that particular thing. And it is also giving them an opportunity to try out newer things there. Because IT is all about R&D.
So it's like, sounds like a win-win situation, absolutely. Yeah, so, we heard Aastha give the whole ecosystem, and then we heard Dr. Taslim speak about the incubation, the healthcare piece, especially low-cost innovation. We're hearing corporates opening their doors to take that risk. Before I go to Achin, I just want to take a pause. And is there any question in somebody's mind that needs an immediate response? Or yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. So, our organization is into reinstating troubled youth and women in prisons, observation homes, and remand homes. And we address both the sections of health as well as livelihoods in our interventions. Health from a standpoint of psychological issues that they have once they enter these homes, and bringing a mindset or a behavioral change in them. And secondly, livelihoods to reinstate them, give them vocational skills so that they can make a credible living after they are out of these institutions. So my question is with regards to startups. We are a not-for-profit, and typically any not-for-profit, when you get registered, there's a gestation period of about 1 to 3 years until your ATGs and 12As and CSR 1 forms come through to be able to be eligible for CSR funding, right? So, and any startup is qualified as a startup if you've been in under 3 years of operation. So how are CSR, companies CSR actually helping startups in this space? Because yes, there are startups who are for-profit startups and they get lapped up by the VCs of the world. But then there are not-for-profits who still have not qualified. Yes, there are provisional, ATGs perhaps in place who come through faster, but, they are yet not there and still looking for funding.
Aastha, do you have I'll come to that, but do you have a way how government is looking at this situation? Because I can go back to the CSR law for her and say, but the law has been framed that you do need 3 years presence and
but I think a little angle, one suggestion here would be to look at what the government did to enable funding into startups was through incubators. Realizing that startups are early stage, they will take time to nurture. So the Schedule 7 of the Companies Act introduced that, the 9A point, that money could be channelized through incubators, and how probably CCAMP and a lot of other incubators would be channelized. So once the mandate of that incubator is to support in the area of livelihood and health, like you are working, money can be channelized through incubator into any. So there only the incubator is required to fulfill the requirements to get that money. But how they further use it, how they further channelize it and implement it is as per their prerogative in consultation with the corporate from which they're receiving this.
See, incubators normally have at least 100 to 100 startups, who are aligned with them, at least the ones that I'm exposed to.
Yeah.
And normally the kind of funding that they're giving to the startups is maybe $1 lakh a year or 4 lakhs a year.
Yeah, I would suggest you speak to her. I just want to ensure we have a fair
Sure. Thank you.
segregation and response. Somebody else put a hand up here. Then I'll come to you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you so much for your time. It is a wonderful panel, seeing a lot of some familiar faces. My question to specifically Anurag, because he spoke about vernacular and we have worked for vernacular. Simple situation. My mission right now is that I want to create an Atal Innovation Mission for developing countries. I want to create Atal Innovation Missions for other developing countries. I have seen this problem very closely, that innovation has been shackled with the language of English, and we try to work on the Vernacular Innovation Program. How can we take the learnings of the Vernacular Innovation Program and implement this in a country like Bolivia and Uruguay? These are the two countries that I am advising right now. So how can we take those learnings to other countries is my question to you. Thank you so much.
My take is very clear. Something that I learned from Israel is that you need to start early. The innovation is not something that you bring in there to say that you are innovator and you are not innovator there. You need to expose people to the whole creative thinking of finding a solution there. Unfortunately, our education system doesn't allow you to do that particular thing. When people started talking about bringing in coding at the primary school, people thought that coding is all those computer applications, and that's where some of the ads started coming in saying that my child made an application there and now is selling it off for millions there. Coding is all about breaking a complex problem into a smaller one and then finding solution and then looping it together there. The moment you start teaching these things to kids, you are trying to build the whole culture of creativity and curiosity there at that particular level there. When you start building it there, you start percolating into challenging certain stereotypes there. I always say that when there are two ways. Regulators are all about to regulate or create or maintain the status quo there. Innovators are all about disruption. So if you allow people or create a space for disruption to happen and create environment for that particular thing to happen, then only this culture will flourish. Otherwise, there are a number of systems that we have in our own atmosphere which is there to kill the whole innovation there. One is what you said, that you need to have a brand there, then only you get the order there. Telangana government came out with one particular provision saying that 10% of their procurement will be only from the startups located in Telangana. And that's the reason why Telangana is becoming the startup capital for India there. So you need to somewhere build it and create a system where you start enabling it. Second, with the startup community also. With the Shark Tanks of the world and all, they'll give you 10 lakh rupees and you are after them. CSR is giving you 1 CR, but you don't acknowledge them also. And that's where the CSR community will then go into background to say that अगर मुझे visibility भी नहीं दे रहा है, equity भी नहीं दे रहा है, debt की बात ही छोड़ दो, then why should I be putting in money there? So there needs to be some product that you need to be developing it where I'm not equity, but I'm seeking some amount of result, impact, benefit to the larger community that you are dealing with.
There's a lot one can learn from Anurag, but ma'am, your question, and then we go to the second round.
Thank you so much. My name is Divya. I'm from Possible. I'm the founder of this new organization called Possible. And I feel that I'm always in this dilemma when building a health enterprise, that some of so I want to cater to mostly vulnerable populations. Some of them have paying capacity, some of them don't have paying capacity. And I believe that my model is always
going to be... Can you come to your question?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah. Like partly it will always be either philanthropically dependent and only partly can be consumer dependent. And I feel a lot of people working in that space of doing impact startups have this problem that, they are catering to populations who have variable paying capacity. For organizations like us, what kind of financial models would you recommend as experts?
Perfect. That's a great beginning to the question that I have for Achin, really. And I would want you to listen to him. Achin comes with expertise in blended finance, and it took me a long time to understand what blended finance was all about. So, Achin, maybe you could take over and also answer the question asked as to how do blended finance can really support CSR programs and make them sustainable. But maybe first begin with what is it all about?
Sure. So let me ask a question myself to the audience first. How many of you have heard of blended finance or maybe have been a part of this blended finance journey? Quite a limited number of people. So which means that it really becomes difficult for me, and I need to ensure that my answer should be very simple so that the audience has got a good takeaway in terms of understanding the blended finance. So blended finance in simple terms is mixing, blending two forms of capital. So on one side, we have got the grant capital, which actually helps in terms of de-risking the private sector capital. So what we are doing with blended finance facility is that we are, the idea is basically to structure a transaction wherein we can bring upon the philanthropic or CSR capital and then de-risk the private sector capital and then attract as much private sector capital into the specific sectors that we are dealing with. Let me put it this way. Another very desi example. The desi chai, the Indian desi chai. How many people love Indian desi chai? Oh, limited hands. I thought everyone is going to raise the hand as far as the desi chai is concerned. किसको अदरक की चाय पसंद है? Okay. What about इलायची की चाय? So what you can see from the audience is, you have got different hands when it comes to adrak ki chai, when you have got different hands when it comes to ilaichi ki chai. So what I'm trying to explain is, consider Indian desi chai as, a blended finance thing. And what we do is, so far when we are having a desi chai, we have got a milk, we have got the chai patti that we use. Now consider them as a traditional form of capital that we have been using so far. But with the cinnamon, the adraks, the ilaichi, the dalchini, the masala, what we are trying to do is we are trying to bring in more private sector capital. So with the traditional capital, there has been impact. But with the forms that I'm talking about, the different forms of dalchinis and the different forms of, ilaichis and all that stuff, we have been able to create much larger impact that actually stays, much bigger than what is happening today. And then when we talk about the adrak ki chai, different forms of capital, so that what I'm talking about is mainly towards your different forms of blended finance instruments that we have been able to use. So you can talk about the risk guarantees, you can talk about the interest subventions, you can talk about the impact bonds. So all these different type of blended finance instruments helps in terms of understanding the need of the people, and accordingly we design these particular transaction over there. I hope I've been able to answer and explain to you what blended finance means, but would be happy to interact post this session also.
No, अभी ये इतना चाय सुन के I so much want a cup of chai. But basically, Achin, what I'm understanding, पैसे की कमी नहीं है. There is a different kind of ecosystem that exists to get more funds, and especially to make your project sustainable. As a corporate, we work maybe 3 years, 4 years, and then we move out. But if the project is interesting, has shown impact, then maybe Achin is the person one can work with to see can more money come in from donors who are keen to continue working. So ma'am, to your question, please ensure that you catch hold of him after this session and find more answers, right? But yes, but before you catch anybody, I want to go back to Anurag. With all this getting board approvals to show, and I love the way you said that instead of 0%, you're showing a 20% appreciation in the work. Any other challenges, barriers that you feel that come up when you work with startups?
There are many. The point is that the CSR says that profit, it should not be profit-driven motives there. Startup primarily is profit-driven motives there. So finding a balance to say that that how much profit you can make from the equity that I am bringing in there. That's one of the challenge. And
put in an equity in it.
No, I'm not
you don't.
putting it. I'm
Yeah.
like, you need to, when you discuss with the startups, you can't discuss with startup with the CSR hat there. You need to discuss with startup with the same language that they understand. You'll have to talk about equity, you need to talk about exit, you need to talk about debt, you need to talk about buyback, you need to talk about those terms that they understand. That's one. Second is that the whole question of, for example, all the solutions that we have developed, we try to, there are two things that we do. Either they should be open source, so that it's available for others to use it there. So if you have done R&D, then the results are out for everyone to use it. Or if it's not open source, then I need X number of free licenses of that particular version there, so that I can deploy it through my grassroots NGOs, that particular solution free of cost to the beneficiaries there. And then I'll allow that particular agency also to make profit there. The I'll say areas where we miss out completely is, or the challenge that we have is, at the CSR level, the CSR heads are not trained to celebrate failures. We are only trained to talk about successes. We are only the whole false bravado that we have deep inside ourselves to say that everything that I did was success. And that is creating a huge amount of challenge for you to go in front of the board to ask these things, because board are, they are pool of wiser men and women sitting there. And you can't bluff them by saying that everything that I did was success. So last time when I went there, we ran a cohort with NSR Cell IIM Bangalore. There's a Velocity 2.0 that we have launched. And we reached out to them to tell them that the scale-up model that I had, which we did it with 5, 3 of them failed, tanked, and due to COVID and other reasons, 2 of them are surviving, and 2 out of 2, 1 is thriving. So you need to have that particular courage, and when you tell them that 20% is the success rate there, then you have the courage to go back and tell them that this is what is happening. When you go back and tell them the 100% I have been successful, you will always hide things, and that creates a greater amount of challenge to this particular audience to understand. And second is language. CSR, you can't bring in CSR language when you're dealing with a startup. You need to talk in the business term.
No, I think that's the second part is very important. But I do want to comment on the first piece of the bravado. That is, I find that missing even at the leadership level of businesses. They just do not celebrate failures. We have been talking of having a dashboard. Please put up your failures. Let's accept it, and because that's an opportunity to do better.
We give award. Yeah, we give award.
You for the best failure, right?
Best failure.
Yeah, it takes because you're taking a risk to jump into something that is totally unknown, but you have jumped in. Right? People don't jump in at all because they don't want to be seen as a failure of an experiment or something like that. And I know how much we have to face our board, and they begin with failures. Aapne ye nahi kiya, aapne wo nahi kiya, nahi kiya. I said, hello, but this is so much we have done. Please look at that. And that comes in the end. By that time, the failures are seen as a big blot. You have not achieved. So I think this is what we collectively, the CSR community needs to do, and push back and say, let's take a risk and let's learn from there what needs to be done. But I think with risk also comes a framework that is sometimes required to be followed. And that's where I want Aastha, to share. I remember in Startup 20, there was a book released on the framework for startups and all. So what kind of regulatory support or frameworks does the government provide for startups?
No, I think first, I'm so glad to hear about celebrating failures at the corporate level also, and that's what we've been pushing at the startup level, that while we are talking about unicorns, but there are so many startups that need to be sustainable, and there are so many that may not even survive. So let's be okay with that. And the reason we brought about the seed capital money that we are investing in startups was, simply to tell incubators, just give money to startups, let them fail, let them succeed, but let them try. And this entire concept led to providing early stage funding. Like I mentioned, in terms of the framework that was launched at G20 was more around corporate governance framework for startups, talking about the essential elements that they must incorporate right from the start. But not being very hard on startups, even the businesses have got it very late, and the only factor what we're trying to drive is just start early and start with the right ethics, because later you will not get the chance to correct it. So it's better to start it at the foundation level. Like I mentioned, through the incubators is where we are enabling CSR funding. Just from a stats perspective, there is about 25,000 crore money that goes into CSR. Of all the development projects, only about 200 crores is going into incubators over the last years, which is just about 0.1%. And this is one of the bottom three sectors which is being, which is getting CSR money from the corporate. So I think my message to the audience, to the corporates, to the business enterprises would be to sort of bring this sector from the bottom three to at least, somewhere up high, and start taking that risk with startups. It may not come easy, but we have some successful examples here. We have some successful ways here as well.
And that sort of, I'm not going to look at that clock, by the way, because I think we deserve a few more minutes with everybody else taking extra time. So please shut that clock for us. Taslim, I want to come back to you on, do share with us something on what is this post-production programs, and you mentioned that to me and I got a little lost on that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And where do you see CSR and startups coming in there?
No, surely. So before I go there, I just wanted to ensure that, in a way, when just in terms of the schematics, the CSR which comes, of course, it comes with saying that it should not be for profit and all. Hence, the structure has been built and incubation centers have been positioned to actually work with startups, to build programs and work with corporates so that this can be done. And that's what traditionally has been done. Unfortunately, it hasn't been the larger number that, as Ms. Aastha said, and I think we are working to do it. And possibly incubation centers have to work with startups and build more and more credibility within the CSR system to actually come and do more of it, because the kind of work that is required to do, there is a differentiator. And if I may, there is a immediate short-term visibility for CSR, and there is definitely a long-term impact that from CSR. And I think more and more corporates are actually broadly looking to now make a long-term impact with solutions which are science and technology based, which are possibly going to make a difference in terms of enriching the system for long-term and build on that. Now, that is where I was coming from, a perspective that incubation centers can play a long role. Both traditionally, it has been done from the way I think Capgemini has mentioned from the NSR cell in terms of early stage building of startups, supporting them, early stage immersion and so on. But interestingly, if you all know, startups and the entire effort in the years of last 10 years and more have actually now enabled many of the early work has come to fruition. Many of the long-term impact, long investments have now come to products which are actually now globally high quality, affordable, accessible, and contextual. We have products which are, 3 products are FDA approved now, FDA approved, right? CE approved. We have 80 to 90 products in healthcare which are now CDSCO approved. These are completely regulatory approved. What we want is that these are now, everything has been taken. How do we actually help them? So what we have done over last years is that taken science from the early fields of, let's say, soccer, football. From your field, you have gone to the midfield, you have come to the strikers where they can score the goal. Now it's time to score the goal. The innovations are ready, the products are ready, and they have to now score the goal into the net. And this is the post-production that I'm talking about. They have done everything, they have scaled up, but the last unlocking of getting into the system, and India has the largest public health system, right? We can talk about the health is largely public health, it's public health driven, right? So you have to get into the system to score the goal and build the impact. And that is where the post-production integration. And we learned it a hard way. When COVID times came, a lot of efforts were to be like, what are the solutions which can support the COVID situation? And luckily, we were in the game of health for 10 years, and we were having products which were in the vicinity of COVID. With the support of CSR and philanthropies, I can say that we have been able to take those solutions in 19 states of India only for COVID. And that is remarkable. That's a post-production integration in the public health system, which will give confidence to government, which will confidence to the practitioners that these innovations, although they don't have a brand today, but they have now ticked all the boxes, they have done everything required, and they can serve it after 2 years of the evidence generation pilots that we have built. And that is a new program that we are hoping to build more and more. So one is building them all the way towards production, and that is something pre-production stage. And post-production is something we want to do extensively, because I think if we keep everything ready and they don't score this goal, I'm sorry, but we are not going to get the best out of it, and that's where it's going to be very important.
Yeah, I couldn't score the goal for the time, but I want to continue at least and ensure, with
I would
all
like
of
to
this,
ask-
what you... Ashish, 1 minute. I do have a question for Achin, and I know Anurag has been wanting to speak, and then I'll come to you. But, to score that goal and make a perfect 10 or whatever you want in that, you need money also. And Achin, any barriers you face in, given that the CSR law keeps coming with amendments at such high speed and such regular intervals that we also get taken aback at sometimes. What are those barriers you feel in adoption of blended finance?
Yeah, that's an interesting question actually. And before that, I'll just let the audience know. So I basically represent Samrid, the blended finance facility, which is sponsored by USAID, Rockefeller Foundations, and we have also got support from the likes of various CSR corporates like 361 Foundation, IndusInd Foundation, and then from the financial institution side, we are working closely with Axis Bank, HDFC Bank, and this is a $300 million facility where we have been able to reach out to 43 million people. Now, why I'm saying this is that while we have got a support from a lot of philanthropic organizations, when we go to CSR, and I'm sure a couple of people who are sitting in the panels, the Bahl Foundation, and also talking to Anurag for a long time, there is a tussle in terms of getting the CSR money into the blended finance space. And one of the biggest reason is the regulatory reason. Because if you actually look at the CSR laws, these laws are pretty much silent on how to use blended finance with the help of CSR money, which actually becomes difficult for people like us to, getting into a transaction, how things can be structured, what kind of a social impact. And, one of the biggest challenges whenever you go to the CSR people, the first thing that they ask is, okay, utilization certificate milega ki nahi, ye batao. So there are challenges that we feel when it comes to the CSR using into the blended finance space. But then I'll also talk about some other challenges. So another challenge is the limited knowledge or awareness around the blended finance facility. So for instance, when I asked, among the audience, how many people are aware of the blended finance terms or have been able to use it, hardly it was 5 to 10 hands in an audience of around 200 people out there. So we can understand that there is a very limited knowledge when it comes to blended finance. Then the third factor is, in a blended finance facility, we are working with 100 plus partners. So, this includes the financial institutions, the multiple donor capitals. We are talking about multiple stakeholders like Niti Aayog, Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India. Now, all these people have got different interest in terms of the kind of impact measurement that they would like to do when it comes to these kind of projects. So, when we are transacting a structure, we need to be very careful in terms of the kind of measurement matrix that we establish on these kind of people. Different donors, different measure impact matrices, and hence it becomes a little bit difficult in terms of implementing the same. The fourth point I would also like to talk about is absence of standardized model. See, blended finance is actually not a standardized and it's still picking up. It's actually, while at the global level, there are a lot of blended finance structures using the equity forms and the debt forms. But when it comes to India, there has been a limited usage as of now. And hence there is a, limited standardized models which are there. And when we get into the blended finance space, we have to be very, the idea is basically to create the bespoke solutions. So if you remember in my first response, when I had spoken about the different forms of chai that we can have, since there were different people requiring adrak and elaichi as all that, so the idea is basically to create different forms of structures depending upon the need of the people. So multiple challenges, but with the help of Samrid facility, we have been able to transact a structure with 361 Foundation into the CSR space using the risk guarantees, And there has been multiple models wherein the CSR community has supported blended finance transactions through the help of impact bonds, through the help of interest subventions and other things. So these are the things that...
Yeah, but I think that's a big list of challenges we need to work. But awareness, I think, is the first one. And I'm sure today a lot of people are going back informed on what is blended finance. Before I open up to the audience, I just have very quick rapid fire question for all of you. Please don't take more than a second. If you had a magic wand, what would you wish for, Aastha? Very quickly. If you can't answer, you need to think I'm asking Anurag.
100,000 billion funding for all.
Okay, funding for all of them.
Respect and dignity for CSR.
Wonderful. Taslim.
Identify 5 thematic areas that we all want to make change, and those would be maternal child health, primary health care, non-communicable diseases, and geriatrics health. I think making change in those areas would be important.
And Achin, what's your answer? Magic wand, what do you want?
When it comes to wish list, I'm also
only one.
Just one wish list. Before that, I'll just recite something for you guys जो आज मैंने सुबह ही लिखा था कि काबू में रहे ख्वाहिश तो गंवारा है उसे वरना ख्वाहिशें गुनाह बदलते देर नहीं लगती. So we have to be careful when it comes to the wishes also. Otherwise कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि वो गुनाह बन जाए. But for me, it will be actually the changes in the CSR laws and in terms of taking it to the blended finance is something which I'm very much keen for.
All right, I'll just open up for 2 questions. I know Ashish, you've been wanting. Anurag, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I would like to thank Aastha for highlighting the need of supporting incubators through CSR fund. I have a question for all the panelists, how CSR partners, like CSR organizations can partner with incubators, and the funding which is made available can be deployed for some manufacturing activities rather than apps and other things.
Maybe Anurag, you want to take that up?
No, ask the other question also.
Yeah, who else has a question? Last one question, yes ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much. I am Ankita and I'm an independent consultant working on gender. So my question for everyone, because you're innovating. So आप किस तरीके से, can I do Hindi?
Yes, please.
So जब हम innovation की बात करते हैं community level पे, तो हम किस तरीके से community को अपने साथ में लेके innovation का design कर रहे हैं from the start, which says research to designing, to monitoring, to the evaluation. How do you make sure you engage the community actively?
Thank you. I'll have Taslim answer that, but Anurag to Ashish's question.
One is, I've been saying this in all the forum. CSR is becoming a punching bag for everyone there. And I feel sometimes that's the reason why I said that what we seek is dignity and respect. 200 crores we may have given in this particular sector. How many startup conclave has appreciated the role of CSR? None. No, it doesn't. We do not have. Everyone will say that CSR should fund this. Har Ghar Tiranga CSR should do this. Namami Tate CSR should do this. X, Y, Z CSR should do this. But are we also acknowledging the kind of, I'll say, some amount of space and dignity for this particular sector also? We are only being used, we are only being called when the money is needed. We are never being called to design the program there. We are never been asked to sit and say that, hey, can we conceptualize this particular thing? Program announce ho jata hai, then log bolte hain ki paise dal do iske andar mein. That can't be the modus, no. We'll have to somewhere change.
Anurag, I'll tell Ashish to connect with you and figure out what's the best way. But
no, this is for the larger. I'm not answering this particular question. This is for the larger audience and for the state also. If you want CSR to fund, involve CSR at the initial level itself.
Being the partner.
As a partner, we cannot be. I don't go to those places where I only ask for the money there. I need to be involved in the process. I
think the better word would be co-create together.
I'm not diplomatic, so I play with the state bat there. So
I like that. Taslim, if you could answer.
No, but I agree with Anurag. I think joint mandates. It's a partnership and it's a joint mandate, and I think one has to work with those joint mandates, so completely. But coming back, the question that you had, but if I make one line answer, the way to do it is that there is a possibility to even support startups for the capacity building, production, and so on. So the incubation center, and we have done that. We have been able to fund startups for those causes as well, or deployment across the line, so it can be done. So this was just a quick answer to you. Yeah. But coming back, ma'am, your question, I think what we have done, and that's why my entire thing was contextual. You can't build contextual innovation if you don't understand the context. And that begins with understanding the problem itself. So we actually have a very detailed program called Immersion Program, which allows those innovators to go and be in the field to understand the problem, come back and now re-articulate the problem, because the world has articulated it. But you have to go in the field and understand the real nuances of it and re-articulate. So it's a very important program we run. And based on that, we then build the innovation. But again, don't lose the sight of it. So go back and recheck whether the need is the same. The community need is the same or not, as you rightly said, and build on it. Just to give you one very quick on that.
Quick.
Yeah. So that has led to world's only innovation, which is now approved for one of the most fatal condition in ICU, called ventilator-associated pneumonia, which takes away 1 out of 2 lives of elderly when they actually acquire pneumonia in the hospital when they are ventilated. This problem was understood through immersion, and it is now FDA approved, only FDA approved in the world, and that has been done completely at CCAM. So it's a very important component that you raised.
You can connect with him. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm going back with a lot of wisdom from today's conversation, and that takes me back. I feel makeup and wisdom both are the same. It's only when you apply them that you see the change. You apply makeup, you look beautiful. You apply the wisdom that you learn, you change the way you think. And we can only act if we change the way we think. Right? So thank you, my panelists, right, for a wonderful session. And I hope you people also enjoyed it. Thank you so much.